So my question to you is, do you think that deja vu is like a glitch in the matrix? So in theory,
No.
we've lived life once before, and we just, when we die, you kind of reset and you do it on repeat. So you live the life again, and then that's where your deja vu comes in. So you think to yourself, I've experienced this before, because you have.
No. I think that that's a popular opinion, but I think it's wrong. I think that it's just your brain kind of tricks you, or maybe you've thought of it before and it's just like I don't know how to describe it. I don't think it's that though.
Well, it's not a trick. According to the research that I was doing, it's a part of one of your lobes. So you've got like 4 lobes.
Yeah, you do.
And it's one of like the frontal lobes, and it's essentially your brain's way of correcting memories. And so it says that it's a way for it to fact check itself, essentially. So your brain is working if you have deja vu, because it fact checks memories, and it's basically saying, oh, this is not that same memory. It feels a little similar, but we have this memory already. So it's not that, essentially.
Right.
At least that's what I looked up.
But what do we know?
Well, what do we know? We're not scientists. But I think the idea of the fact of maybe just living life again and again and again, does that thought scare you? Like, this isn't your...
I wouldn't know, because I'm living it again. So,
right.
I mean, why
but
would
what
it
if
scare
eventually
me?
you live it so much that you become aware? What if we're just not all fully aware that we've lived this life about 20 times already?
I mean, that's fine, because I'm not aware of it.
So you get born the same way, you die the same way every single time, and then...
Let me tell you about Jesus Christ, because it don't work like that.
Well, who say he's not the one that's...
The Bible, the literal Bible says he doesn't do that.
But it's like it could be a test. So, in order to be accepted, you have to have experienced this life enough to know the ins and outs.
I can tell you right now, that's not the case.
In any case, this is going to be a deja vu episode, because we are going to bring the matter of subjectiveness back into reality.
We had like 4 separate arguments.
It's been a spicy week. We've caused rifts in our friendships, and in multiple cases between all up and down the East Coast of the USA. Well, the Southeast corner. Okay,
so episode 2, there was this whole thing where I just need to clarify this, because I will say, I admit, I called you a bad artist. That is not what I was trying to say.
Well, she said it.
So what I was trying to make the point of was that, by your logic, that there should be a standard in art. If we were using that logic, then I could easily say your art is bad, and you could say my art is bad to you. If there was a standard. If
it was considered bad. But there is a subconscious standard amongst people, and it is an individual standard that each of us carry. Some might have the similar one. So then that's where, like, you would say society standards, right? Because we all share that common standard in the general population. However, just because you have a common standard with someone else, it doesn't mean that that's still not their own personal standard that they set. So you having that common standard doesn't make it the standard of the world or in art or whatever. But it's not the standard. So
what?
In all the conversations that we've been having this week, we've caused rifts in Atlanta, we've caused rifts in Orlando, we've caused rifts all the way down to Miami. But so in all the conversations that we've been having this week, before episode 2 even came out, by the way. So episode 2 hadn't even dropped yet, but we wanted to ask our friends this, but we decided to bring it in. It was so ununanimous. Is that a word?
Ununanimous?
it wasn't resolved. So it wasn't resolved. So we thought we had to bring it back again. But I think in the realm of subjectivity, there is a universal standard
subjectivity
to a point. So everyone has an individual standard, yes, and I would call those outliers. So there's a general standard and
outliers.
They're outliers. So they're within the average, but they kind of stick out in their own way, like, you know, extreme left or extreme right. Like they lean a little more in one direction than the other, but there's still a generalized standard. And the example that I used for this was the idea of a straight horizontal line. I almost wish I had a whiteboard here so I could display it, at least on the YouTube side, but because this is vocal, I'm going to do my best to accurately describe it with my voice.
Do it with the sound.
With the sound. Zzz. So picture a horizontal line, just a straight line, and it's not going anywhere. And that's what I think people are saying what I view the standard is. And
in art.
And that's not the standard. That's a depiction of what standard is, but it's not, you know, black and white just like that. It's not directly there. There's a little more gray area, which is what I said. So there is, and I also agreed, art is subjective with a grain of salt. There should be a standard and there is a subconscious one, but if you picture it, it's more...
Oh, there should be.
There should be.
Okay, wait. So then that is your opinion.
It's... No.
No, what?
It's not really an opinion.
It's your opinion that there should be,
but there is a standard, and it's why I say, because I'm on the fence, but I lean towards more. I lean towards more the standard line, because there's a standard, but it's not an official standard. There's not a guidebook that you can go to and look at it and say this is the standard. It's not an official standard
because it's a personal standard.
Well, it's not a personal standard. There's a mass agreement on this, and that's why I was saying.
Who's mass agreeing? I am mass agreeing.
You're an outlier.
I'm a person. I am a person.
The masses are what set the pace for anything, and I mentioned this in the last one too. The fact that it's all about being liked by the generalized population. Okay, so I'm saying if you like, oh, I want to be liked by 10,000, 100,000, a million people, that's where the standard comes in. So if you picture it like a squiggled line, so this is it. This is the standard here. So, you know, there's ups and downs, there's ebbs and flows. Shout out Camel Case.
Oh my God.
You're going to love that one, Jordan. There's ebbs and flows in there. And that's the, so to speak, standard. And so there's an average, sure, but you have outliers. You have people at the top, the peak, that's saying, oh, this is really good art, or you have people that peak below and saying this is really bad art. But generally speaking, they all come towards an area where most people would say this is inherently good, right, or bad.
So it's like a Venn diagram.
A Venn diagram? How do we get to a Venn diagram?
Hey, listen. Hear me out. So what you're saying is we all have our own standards, like the left side of Venn diagram. Like, let's say we're comparing us two. I'm on the left, you're on the right, but we also have that common ground in the middle, which is what you're calling the standard.
Sure, yeah. Okay, let's go with that. The middle ground is the standard. But even a Venn diagram is like big. It's not a straight line.
So here's what happens then, because when we're together, we can agree on that standard.
Okay.
Unified, right?
We're the mass here.
Right. We're the mass.
We are the masses.
We are the
masses.
This household. In this household, yes. So when I'm, say, apart, and we're no longer a Venn diagram, I'm just my circle self. I'm my circle self. You still have a standard. I still have the same standards, right? But I don't have those standards because we're unified. I have them because those are my individual standards.
Yes.
So how you're like, I'm confused then. If you agree with that, then how can you also agree with the fact that there's one unified standard?
Well, there's not
between art.
Like I'm saying, it's not black and white. There's not a single, it's not saying if you paint this art exactly 200 degrees to the north and 35 degrees south and, you know, right at 6:03 p.m., and make sure that it's not raining and that the wind chill is at -5. That is not precise. It's not a specific standard where it's saying this is the formula, this is it, and once you hit this, you've made it. But there's a generalized area. It's like going to school. Like, you've taken art classes. I've taken art classes, and you get graded on that. So why is that fair? I take a grade for my art, and I failed some lessons because I didn't, meet whatever requirement was there for my art class.
But
and
that's the standard that the teacher set,
because they're looking
based off of their individualistic standard.
No, but then that's unfair. So why
it is?
Why even take an art class at that?
Art is subjective. I could paint something that is a straight line, and they're asking for a straight line, but my straight line, I'm like, I'm an artist. I get to paint this however I want. So I make the straight line a little fuzzy. But other people, it's just like a solid straight line. I did the straight line. But
there's
made
a concept
fuzzy,
to follow.
But then they're like, well, I asked for a straight line. That is a straight line. No, it's fuzzy. So?
Well, that's just describing the appearance of the straight line. If you tilted the line, then it's no longer a straight line.
Yes, because that
I don't
right
think
there
you get
is...
points off for the description of what the line looks like per se.
They can if they're the teacher, and because it's subjective, you get to do whatever you want.
Okay, so how do you grade something if it's subjective? You can't. There are measurements in life where something is considered good or bad. There is subjective measurements, and it is subjective with a grain of salt. There's a standard to live by. They're teaching you concepts in art class. First of all, we're saying this is this concept, so you can't just go off on a tangent and say, well, you know what, this is art. I hear your concept, but I raise you my art. I'm going to do what I want to do, but you never learn that. You didn't learn the concept that they're teaching you. Because
we're talking about art, not
in art class,
not like geometric rules or theory, like art theory. We're not talking about that.
But where would all that come from? There's a standard set.
That came from geometry, science, all those types of things where you have to learn, like, well, what's a straight line and what's a square and what's a circle? Like, that's where that comes from. But what we're talking about here, let's go back. What we're talking about here, we're not going to
finish this today. Like,
yes, we are. I'm determined. We are talking about art in general. Can there be good art? Can there be bad art? You say there can be bad art because of the quote unquote rules that are
generalized standard, no rules. Well, they're kind of rules.
That's the same thing.
It's
generalized standard are rules. So then you would find so much more freedom in the fact that you can create whatever you want and it will be okay, because that's your art and that's your piece of art that you can, like, you hold yourself in such a, like, by that thought process and by that logic, you're creating a lot of barriers for yourself.
But it'd still be okay, even if the art is good or bad to someone else, it's still okay because it's your art. And
to someone else.
Oh, yes, but there's still a standard to meet. And it's we talked the other day when you told me that
personal standard to meet.
Generalize. It's like the world is almost a democracy in and of itself.
No, because then it depends on where you go, because the world is not the same like how it is in the United States. The United States is not the world.
Well, then
so the
go
standards
where your
different.
standard will be accepted.
There's
as
no
good
generalized
art.
standard.
If 60% of people agreed to a point and 40% of people, if I showed people a picture of like my hand doing this, if 60% of people was like, that's good art because his hand's got the good motion, it's leaning in 90 degrees, but it's straight up, whatever you want to call it, and 40% of people say that's bad art, the generalized consensus would be that it's good art. So there's a mass agreement in that sense.
Just because there's a mass agreement, it doesn't mean that it doesn't come from one person, singular freaking opinion.
What do you know in the world where one person said something and most people agreed on it?
That happens.
There are
all
several
the time.
cases where
yes,
that happens.
It literally happens all the time. You lose. I win.
No, there's still there's a general agreement on it. And that's where the standard comes in, because that one person, they're doing their art, and Yeah, sure. The masses may say, "Oh, this is bad art," but to them, it's good art. But like I said, last episode, that
Last episode.
that you have your niche artists. They find their niche and they're okay with being in that little pocket. This is their realm. This is their zone. They said, "This is what I like to create." In episode 2, the theory was fart glass jars and exploding that into the air. That's their niche, and they stick with that, and they stick by it because they're like, I love it. This is what makes me happy. And that's fine. But when you want to reach more people, you have to come to that generalized standard, which there is one. Because most people would agree saying this is good to most people.
Let me tell you something.
Tell me something.
What standard do you think God has? What do you think? Just like a fun question.
Written. His standards are written.
For your art.
For my art?
Like, let's say you...
God talking about my art?
Let's say you wrote something. What do you think?
But even then, so you and I both know that when...
That's a freaking question.
What standards does God have for me in my art? Where, I mean, when you present something to God, you want to bring it with excellence. So he wants good. But...
Which is what?
Your best.
Which is what?
In what?
In creating music.
In creating music, something that's
a drum cover,
sound, and you put all your heart into it. Essentially, make a good noise unto the Lord.
Amen. And you just proved my point, because
we're not talking about Jesus. Well,
what? Y'all heard it here. Y'all heard it here first. This man is a heathen.
No, don't set me up.
We are always, listen, one thing we do,
we're talking about the world.
One thing we do is always point it back to him, because that is what we create for. That is an outpouring expression, our art. We should always be doing it to please him, not the world, not the world's standards.
You just Jesus juked me.
I did not Jesus juke you. I did not.
You Jesus juked me to make a point.
Because it's true. Is it not true?
Yes, in the eyes of the Lord, if you put your whole heart into it, it's true.
And that is the point. He is the ultimate creator. Like, he is the most creative person you should look to. And even when we're arguing, when we're getting fiery, what do we always do? We say, okay, let's point it back to him then. Like, how would he treat me if I did this to him? And so why do we not do that when we're creating? Why do we have to think about the world standards, the beauty standards, the cultural standards?
Because monetization is involved. It
doesn't matter though, because he will take care of that later.
It does on the planet. It does. In the planet Earth, monetization matters because we have to make a living. That's a thing.
Right.
And it's not to say that the Lord won't take care of you. So in the eyes of God, you're already seen whole. And, if you put your whole heart into it, he's going to love it. But in the eyes of the world, because we need to make a living, and if that's a realm that you want to make a living in, it needs to be seen good by the people that are going to be giving you your monetization for it.
I don't disagree with that. Like, I think that you do need to present what you have with a level of excellence, and that most people will find excellent. But that doesn't mean that what we're presenting to the world or our artwork, that we're doing it based off of a mass opinion, but rather we're doing it based off like the individual person. Because when I'm creating art, I'm thinking of a specific person. I have a specific person in mind. And that doesn't include the mass opinion of all those people that might think similarly, but rather just like the individual type of person. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm thinking, and like what you're referring to is that, okay, there's a mass opinion of what a standard should be in art. But I don't see it that way. I think that we all have individual standards of art that sometimes might meet in the middle, like a Venn diagram. Sometimes they overlap where they have things in common.
But that would be where the standard would lie. In
so
theory.
we're saying the same thing.
No, we're not saying the same thing, because you're taking it from an angle of, and I respect it, what you're creating
Thank
as an
you.
artist. You don't, you're not in it to gain the world's popularity, but that's what
Yes.
makes your art unique to you, and for anyone else in that matter that's doing art for that. They're just doing it to satisfy their itch for art, or they're making art unto the Lord and things like that, and that's fine. There's no wrong in doing any of that. However, it's where you want to reach more people, and you have to kind of appeal to more thought processes. So everyone has their own unique thing or unique ideologies on, what's good or what's bad. But if you want more people to consider something that you have good, you have to make it generalized to more people, meaning there may be some sacrifice in what you want to do. And in, the world of artistics and movies and whatnot, people would call you a sellout. And in that case, it can be possible. People called, I'm going to throw some names out that you probably don't even know, but people called Miles Davis a sellout.
I know who Miles Davis is.
Okay, good. Well, I would hope so.
What do you think of
But
me?
people called Miles Davis a sellout. People called Kenny G a sellout. You know Kenny G?
I do know Kenny
He's one of
G.
my favorite saxophonists, but people consider him a sellout because what they did was, in the theory, I still have...
Wait, why would you say I don't know these people?
I don't know. I can name people sometimes. You're like, who's that? I figured you weren't well versed in the jazz world.
I love jazz.
That's my scene.
You know I love jazz.
Name one other jazz artist.
Kenny G.
I just named him.
Oh, wasn't that the name of the guy from Mean Girls?
Oh, Kevin
G.
Not the same person.
Oh, Kevin G. Yeah, anyways.
All those sucker saxophonists ain't got nothing on me. No, so they called them sellouts because what they did was adjust what they were doing in jazz. And I still, know some professors or even jazz students that I went to school with that, their idea of jazz, or, you got to play straight ahead, you got to play bebop, and that's jazz, or you got to like swing hard. You can't do all this fancy fusion stuff. I love fusion jazz. I love fusion jazz. I love smooth jazz. And those guys, as the world changed and the general ideologies, the mass consensus of people was like, I dig this new form of art. I want to consume that. And they molded their style to start doing more things in that realm to match what the populace was demanding, because that's where their paychecks came from. And people like,
spicy.
They're like, oh, they sold out for the money. Some people's gotta live. Like if you're, and they're still making beautiful music, or Miles Davis was. Kenny G is still making beautiful music for people. Like, it still sounds great. And all they did was take something they knew and their style and molded it a little bit to fit what the world, has come to.
And while that's that's understandable and whatever for those who are non-believers, because I think as a believer, like from my experience too, is like nothing else matters but his opinion, the one person's opinion. So, and I believe that he knows the desires of our hearts, and if it isn't in his will to reach more people beyond the ones that he's already given you, then he will make it happen. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in my life where with photography.
Well, I agree with that.
That is, I know you agree with that.
I'm gonna make an alternative point though, but finish. Go ahead.
I'm gonna let you finish.
Go ahead. I have an alternative.
Okay, because I think when you are doing it for one person, the Lord, and he knows what it is that you need and what you want, because we can go over, like I can do art and stuff, and I can do the work that I feel like I'm called to do, and I want to reach the masses and I want to make it, and ain't nothing sinful about that. But I think where the danger lies is when you take him out of the equation and what he wants for you, and when you start thinking of, well, what can I do for myself? How can I scratch this itch for me? Me. We're selfish people. And that's where I don't want to make the mistake when I create. I don't want to create something to satisfy me. I want him to be proud. And then when I am ready to steward more, he will give that to me.
So he's gonna provide you what you need to, if it is a part of your will or his will for you to meet the masses, he will provide you with the opportunity and the tools to meet the masses.
Yeah, and he will open the doors.
He'll open the doors. Okay, so
I'm scared. Okay, what is your
blow
point?
your hat off.
My hair, my Turkish hat.
I'm referring to TikToks unrelated, but
So I know which one now. Pardon.
if I could add the clip in here, I totally would. But so he's providing you with the tools to meet the masses. It's almost like the idea of doctors, when people say, no, I don't need to go to the doctor, I don't need the surgery, the Lord's got me. But
no, that's not the same thing.
It's I'm gonna get to the point.
Not the same
I'm
thing.
Starting at a point. I'm going to land the plane. I'm gonna land the plane. Check this out.
I'll give you a chance.
It's like people saying that I don't need, or it's the idea of the guy in the story of the sinking man. Is like a submarine comes by. No, I'm waiting for God, to save me in a big way. Another submarine comes by. No, I don't need help. I'm waiting for God to save me. 3 submarines, and then he drowns. And so. He's like, oh, what happened? I was waiting for God to save you. And he's like, God's like, I sent 3 submarines to help you out. You're waiting for God to show up in this big way. So people that are like, I don't need doctors, I'm waiting for God to save me. God provided the tools and the modern advancements in medicines that these doctors know how to use in order to give you whatever life-saving treatment that you need. And while that's dramatic in art, does he not provide you
the masses' opinion?
No, he provides you the tools and the things necessary to reach the masses that have that opinion. So if he knows the masses have this opinion, he knows what the masses are thinking. And so in that case, he would in turn, as long as, in your form you're right, that you're doing it for him, he will provide you the tools that you need to reach the masses.
That's literally
in which
what I
case
just said.
He knows that the masses have this standard, and he said, do this because it meets the standard of the masses, and you will reach them for me.
Yes, but
so there's a standard.
No. I think, well, yes and no. Like we're
getting somewhere. I'm bringing her over to my side.
No, because we're literally saying the same thing.
I said that there is a yes and no standard. It's subjective, but there's gray area. There's generalization in that standard.
There's a generalization, but that doesn't mean that it didn't come from an individualistic standpoint.
But it's a collective group. Like I was saying earlier this week about the school of fish theory. How it's a huge scientific phenomenon that a school of fish can collectively move and swerve in and out of, a lot of places really quickly without touching each other. And scientists are still baffled by this idea, but it's the idea of a collective mind. And it was also a game in improv that we were doing, how to try to get a collective mind, with the idea that you try to read or sense what the other person's like thinking or feeling. And then even spending enough time with other people, you tend to mold ideas and thoughts, and you have your differences, but you come together and kind of form one. How we formed this marriage, we had our differences. We're 2 completely different people artistically and all around. We are very much opposites in many ways, but we come together and we form this whole, making our generalized consensus in this house. If it was us against Winston, he's going to lose every time.
But how?
Because we have the generalized standard. We first had
God said, not us.
But we had our individual, whether he said it, whether we said it, there is one. Who said it is,
No, because not everybody's a Christian.
No. Okay, but that
I just confused him.
I'm like, my brain's gonna explode.
I think I just
almost malfunction.
Cannot compute.
No, everybody's not a Christian, but because art is not Christian only. A lot of great art was inspired by Christianity, but art is not Christian
only. A lot
only.
of the best artists aren't even Christian, but that's my opinion.
Yes. Okay, that's your opinion. Let's find a collection of people who may or may not agree that this is the same thing. But that still means that there is a standard of good versus bad art. And like we said last time.
Yes, personally.
All collectively.
Only we set that
there's critiques, standard. There's teachers, there's professors, there's professional artists.
Based off of opinions. He's speechless, everyone.
No.
You're never speechless.
I'm dumbfounded. Because I'm like, why? It's opinion. Isn't anything opinion based? What is real?
So then
nothing's real. Like, let's just throw it out the window.
There are facts.
Nothing's real. There's no facts. 2 plus
Where are we? What year is it?
2 plus 2 equals 4. What are numbers? Numbers aren't a real thing. It's our ability to conceptualize things that we were placed around. So it is a human form in order to make sense of the world that we're in. It doesn't exist. Nothing is real.
You better pray that there's no clipping in this audio.
There's gonna be clipping. I'm gonna edit it like crazy, but not. And I was talking to this with another DJ friend I was working with. His name's Tony, and we were just we got deep. Like we were going into this tangent that nothing. When you really think about it, nothing exists. So
nothing exists. At the end of the day, we're all wrong.
Time is a construct, math is a construct, but it's our human understanding of it. So we put standards to it because it makes sense to us. It is a way for our brains to make sense of everything that's so weird. And there's still things that we can't make sense of. But so we've made sense of, we have facts. We have 2 plus 2 equals 4. Yes. But no, at the same time. So the same would apply to baking, to standards of how furniture needs to be built, to art.
Okay, so how about this? It is still
subjective,
then?
But
this is why I'm saying when we as Christians, as believers, we have one person to point to before he gives us anybody else to influence.
So how do we judge other people's art then? If other people are not in the Christian or
based off of our personal standards.
So I agree with you on the Jesus side. You're gonna Jesus juke me. I agree with you there.
I'm not gonna Jesus juke you. It's the truth. Like we have to turn it back to who we are and what we believe.
In our beliefs, yes. So let's go with in
which
the
is
world.
Truth.
Yes, in the world, but in the world. So people that may or may not believe as well. How do we find that standard? Is there a standard there for people that aren't in our same shoes?
I believe that there is a personal standard that each person upholds to, and it may be in common with the other person or a mass population, but either way, that is an individual standard that can be tweaked whenever they choose fit or whenever they see fit.
So should people get critiques? Should they be critiqued?
Yeah, if they respect the other person's standards. I won. This has been Let Us Pray.
You've won nothing. We'll 3. Agree to disagree because we can't continue this for a third time.
Let us know what you think in the comments.
Please do. Let us know what you think in the comments, or let us pray pod@gmail.com. Send something, please. Someone
help me
affirm my beliefs.
Affirm my beliefs.
Tell me you think I'm pretty. Let us wrap this up. This is it. I
there
guess
ain't nothing left to say.
All right, so can we agree that if we put a poll, whoever wins that poll wins?
Absolutely not. No.
Well, you scared?
I'm not scared. It's just like it's obviously split.
No, it might not be. We could put a poll. Let's agree with me to put a poll.
No.
Let the people decide.
We'll put a poll, but that's not going to ultimately decide.
Because the masses are what makes the decision.
Fine. You know what? You're on.
Make the decision. All right. So when this comes out, we're putting a poll, and we're going to let the masses decide. So please vote.
Remember to stay fresh.
Remember to set your standards. Bye.